AI? What is doxing? What is abuse? What can we do to protect our data? So that was the very beginning of our day, which is important because hearing their voices is key. And then we had a whole session later in the morning focusing on what can we do to protect them from a more legal and bureaucratical and political perspective. And that was also a very fruitful discussion. But this afternoon, it's slightly different. We're going to focus on international perspectives. We're going to focus on research. We have also the police with us to share their concerns, their issues. But we also have a number of people online who will join us from New York, Strasbourg, I believe, and other places around Europe and the world. So it shows the importance of collaboration, of hearing what other people from other countries are seeing, what they're researching, and what they can share with us so we can improve our system and protect our children. So, shall I start by introducing perhaps Mario Calvo Platero? I wonder if he's online with us. No, there's nobody there. We can hear a voice.
Okay, here I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can now. Thank you, Mario.
Lovely, here I am. Lovely.
Excellent,
to be here.
We can see you as well. Nice to see you. Can you hear us well?
I can see you perfectly well, and I can hear you even better.
Excellent. That's the answer that I wanted to hear. Thank you for joining us, and thank you also for creating some provoking questions for our panelists. Next to me, I'd like to introduce my lovely colleague, Sandra Cortesi. Again, she's a professor and director of youth and media at Berkham Center for Internet and Society at Harvard University. We also have here Roberta Mestichella, Deputy Chief and Police of the State Police. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. And we have Pierluigi Dalpino, Senior Regional Director, Government Affairs of Western Europe at Microsoft. And sorry, there's another one from, I don't know, where are you, Emilio? In Strasbourg or are you in Brussels? Emilio Puccio.
Hi everyone, I am in Strasbourg.
Oh, here you are. Hi Emilio.
As
lovely.
Great as Brussels, but Strasbourg nonetheless.
Lovely to see you, Emilio, and thank you for joining us. So Emilio Puccio is the Secretary General for the European Parliament Intergroup on Children's Rights. Thank you for joining us. So how do we start this debate and conversation? Shall I perhaps hand over to Mario? And I'm sure you have some good questions.
Hello, also from Milan, Bocconi. Oreste Policino. I don't know, you forgot me, but there is the right to be forgotten, also the right to be remembered.
I'm so sorry, Oreste. Welcome and thank you for joining us. Oreste is a full professor of construction law at Bocconi in Milano. Thank you for joining us. We were there yesterday, hence, we've forgotten about you.
I think that can be important. One solution can be to ask to Mario Platero and Emilio Puccio to start as a chairman of this meeting to put some question, and after to ask the Professor Policino to start to make his presentation. Mario, first.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. I am in New York at the moment. The issues that we're going to address are very challenging and very much in the news today. I would say that there is a macro issue, which is who is leading artificial intelligence, and the answer, I would say, is pretty clear to this day, with some issues in Europe that is lagging behind. So I think that our panel can address that, and then of course how that in turn can be used to be, to focus on the issues that we have at the table, and therefore how artificial intelligence can be dangerous for, or useful, of course, for teenagers and for younger people. When I say that artificial intelligence is pretty much in the news, I mean that just yesterday afternoon we had a piece of news with Elon Musk offering $97.4 billion to take over OpenAI. There is very much, just from that offer, the idea that there is competition in this market. Europe seems to be more worried somehow than the US about the lack of competition and the risk of having dominant positions from some of these huge groups that are worth trillions of dollars, but that in reality are really competing very much with each other. And the news of yesterday is one example. The news that came from China last week with DeepSeek that, appeared to be a competitor to OpenAI and to BackGPT, but confirms the fact that there is also a global and international competition about this. On the company side, Microsoft has announced an investment of $80 billion of artificial intelligence just last week, and Meta has done the same. I think $60 billion just for this year, just for 2025. Other companies, OpenAI has announced Stargate with an investment over the next few years, over the next 4 years, for $500 billion, $100 billion just for next year are planned, and the story goes on. So I think it would be important, considering we are talking with European players here, to frame what we're doing and what we're trying to reach, also, especially in this session, within the context of where is Europe doing. Europe, I'm going to be provocative, seems to be preaching from an ethical viewpoint, from a competition viewpoint, and so on and so forth, but it's absent from this process. The technology is not there. We are not able to act as an entity, as a European entity. Each country basically goes on its own. And this is very much perceived as a problem here in the United States of America, the fact that Europe cannot be part at this moment of this. So one question arises: how can we be efficient in protecting our children if we are not able to compete at the same level with countries like the United States and China? So I would like, if it is all right, to open our conversation in this particular panel, starting from this issue, and I will give the floor to each of you, and then I'm going to shut up and just help you going on in your considerations. Because these are not irrelevant issues to then address the security of children and how we proceed with that. I also see Ernie now. Good morning, Ernie, who's also part of this panel, and who will enlighten us with some of his consideration. We can start with Oreste, who's here, or with Emilio. I don't mind. Ernesto, I don't know if you have a suggestion, or any of you has a preference.
I think perhaps we should bring in Emilio to start this conversation around, what does Europe do to respond to your question?
We have Emilio from Europe. Yes, exactly.
Emilio, can we leave this, the floor to you to start this conversation? Is that okay?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. First of all, happy Safer Internet Day to all of you. I'm so sorry that I couldn't be there with you in presence. Unfortunately, I'm in Strasbourg for the plenary session of the European Parliament. but I'm with you in spirit, and I'm actually here with you remotely. So thanks as well, Mario, for this introduction. I feel I like the provocative question, and I think this actually gives me the opportunity to kind of bring a little bit the European perspective into this. Mario, you were mentioning the news. I mean, as we speak, actually in Paris, right, not far from here in Strasbourg, the AI summit is taking place with many of the.
I was about to mention that, but I didn't want to mention the competition, but that is yet another example on how, in a way, each country goes on its own. And this is done
Right.
by President Macron at l'Élysée. So, and
Right.
we are Palazzo
Well, we
Chigi.
have a strong presence from the European Union. I mean, President von der Leyen herself was there today delivering a keynote speech alongside with Vice President Vance and many other leaders. And this event has been hosted by President Macron and Prime Minister Narendra Modi from India. So I want to kind of like take back the conversation to what's in the spirit of today's event on today's as well, Savory Internet Day. As Mario rightly said, I mean, artificial intelligence gives enormous opportunities. And at the same time, I want us to also caution about the risks that this poses to children and young people. And then I'm going to just, frame a little bit the conversation through the perspective of children and children's rights, and then maybe actually also touch upon some of the rules and regulatory framework that the European Union has put in place, which doesn't take people on the other side of the Atlantic don't like much, but I think actually the European Union is very much at the forefront when it comes to the regulations, when it comes to the human rights approach, when it comes to honestly identifying a regulatory framework that they can work where humans are getting back control. So of course, when we talk about artificial intelligence, again, there's plenty of opportunities. But at the same time, I want to also say that right now the entire business model of the social media platforms, of the internet, has gotten a bit out of hands, in the sense that it has created enormous social distortions that are having a huge toll on children, on their mental health. They're affecting directly children's mental health. They're affecting directly their brain development. So, those are not just secondary questions we should all ask ourselves. And I think that, on the one hand, of course, we don't want to halt technological progress. And I think Mario was right in saying that, in a way, on this technological aspect, it is true that the European Union is actually lagging behind. Although, like I said, as we speak, I think it was actually a couple of hours ago, Commissioner von der Leyen mentioned a massive investment plan of the European Union on artificial intelligence technology. So, yeah, if on the one hand, we are definitely lagging behind the technological point of view in terms of producing this technology, that's for sure.
Emilio, can I ask you how much was the amount of money that she has suggested to invest?
I think she said 180 billion euros.
180 billion euros, okay, which is the combined effort of Microsoft and Meta alone. We're talking about two companies. I'm sorry, just to make
Right. No, yeah, sure. I mean, that's a very good point. Yeah, I mean, 180 billion. Yeah, it sounds to me like a good amount of money, but yes, for sure. Yeah, I understand the concerns. But yeah, like I said, in terms of what is the technology right there, again, the European Union is still maybe lagging behind on the technological point of view. On the other hand, I mean, I think we understood pretty well how this has to be as well regulated, because I mean, otherwise I ask myself, what kind of humanity are we going to face in a few years' time if we don't try and if we don't try and have a human rights approach and a fundamental rights approach where we actually put the humans at the center rather than the mere profits. And I think, once again, I'm very concerned as Intergroup on Children's Rights, which represents over 125 members of the European Parliament, spanning from the different across the political spectrum. I think we all share the same concerns that if we let the internet and the digital world completely unchecked, this is going to have a huge toll on children. We've seen, and now we are not even lacking scientific evidence anymore. We have plenty of scientific evidence that is pointing us to the nefarious consequences of this overexposure of children to screens, to mobile devices. But as well, in a way, the challenges that we are experiencing, the threats to the entire democratic systems we live in. When I was growing up, and I think a lot of people in the rooms as well, we did not have access to this indefinite, limited number of content, right? So we only had 2-3 channels of televisions. There was a sort of there was a cultural, social experience that was shared. All the kids were looking at the same cartoons. Excuse me. Right now, instead, we are confronted with enormous, and then of course, there are actually also good sides, but we are confronted with a reality where children, adults alike as well, have access to a limited amount of content online. They can, we are thought to think that we are the one choosing the content we're viewing, but the time we actually decide to watch a certain content on those video sharing platforms such as Netflix, for instance, where we are the one, the user, setting up our own preferences. Except we are forgetting that once we actually view a certain type of content, there's a very powerful algorithm behind that is in fact recording this very preference. And then, after that is going to actually show a content that is related to those content that we saw before, or we see this algorithm is going to actually show a content that has been liked by other users who have liked similar content, which is then creating eventually some echo chambers where, again, we are living under the illusion that is the user who is setting their own preferences, and is the user who has the freedom of liberty, the freedom of choosing this very content. But then that's not what's happening actually in reality, because again, there is a powerful algorithm that is deciding for us. And again, artificial intelligence is definitely an important tool. Definitely, I wouldn't argue against it, but it has to be regulated. It has to be regulated. I mean, otherwise, like I said, we are facing a future we don't know where the humanity is no longer going to be at the center. Last week in the European Parliament, we hosted an event with the Center to Counter Digital Hatred, where they presented a very, very, very alarming report called Anorexia and Algorithm in YouTube, where basically this report showed tremendous figures where basically these algorithms were encouraging young girls, especially, but also boys, but especially young girls, to basically, like, this will lead into anorexia in terms of and massive eating disorders. And so once again, there was actually a profit that this company were making through YouTube, through suggesting this very content. It was actually then leading to anorexia and other eating disorders. So this is a kind of, not that we needed more proof than that, but this is kind of a stark testament that, again, if we let the internet unchecked, not only we are going to face problems in terms of our democracy. Again, recently, in the European Union, there were Romania, one of the European Union member states, held the national election, presidential election. And then it found the court, the judiciary, found out that the person in the opposition massively invested in TikTok and other social media platforms, where, once again, they were, with this echo chamber system and this powerful algorithm, then we're basically showing to potential voters the same content. And the fact that, users, and especially children and young people, they're not able to verify those very sources, you can see how this can be actually an attempt, and it's a major threat toward democratization. So that's why, I guess, in the European Union, we understood that already. And that's why we came up with very strong and robust and solid legislative framework, which is trying, again, to prioritize human rights over profits. And then we have, in fact, the Digital Services Act. We have the AI Act, the Artificial Intelligence Act. Let's not forget that the European Union is the first jurisdiction in the world that is regulating AI. Mario, you might argue that it's true. We're not producing, we're not investing in technology per se. Maybe we're good at regulating. But I guess my point, and then I leave the floor to the other people on the panel, is to caution on the fact that we need regulation in order precisely to protect the most vulnerable citizens, which are children and young people in our societies. And we actually we need these regulations as well to protect the very fabrics of our democracies. Otherwise, again, I don't know which future we are going to face.
Emilio, thank you.
Thank you so much, Emilio. So I think you addressed the subject, and it's clear that we need regulation here in the US. There is an ongoing debate about that, and all companies are trying to work together. So there is no doubt that is definitely part of it. But I would like to proceed and involve Oreste in the conversation as a professor of constitutional rights and with Bocconi. So you must have an eye both on protecting our rights as a democracy and human beings, but coming from Bocconi, which is the ultimate business university, I should say now, in Europe, rather than just in Italy or Milan, I'm sure you also keep an eye on what's happening in the development of these technologies. So just going back to what Emilio was saying and to what I introduced at the beginning, Europe as a whole is trying to invest 180 billion, sort of top-down from a government viewpoint. We hear that just on the private sector, just 3 companies are investing about $700 billion, and I'm talking just about OpenAI and Meta and Microsoft. And I think it's very interesting that the news of these new investments came about 5 days after NVIDIA lost about $600 billion on the stock exchange on the news that that the Chinese DeepSeek artificial intelligence platform had been developed at a very low cost. So to connect with that, how come, and then we can move also into the protection of the rights, because I'm convinced that, as I was saying before, in order to address the subject, we cannot just regulate if we don't know and we are not part of the process from an innovation viewpoint. Emilio, not to put it down, but it's a bit of a joke here that Europe is very, very able to regulate, but not too much to innovate. And so those are two separate issues. So why don't we see a private sector developing, Oreste, in Europe that I wouldn't say that it's able to reach the infrastructure that has been developed in the Silicon Valley over the past 50 years, but that could act in parallel to our government?
Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, a word of gratitude to the organizer, to Ernesto, and Mario. Thank you very much for this enlightenment question and for chairing so well a panel in letting emerging the main issues. One of the main issues is the following, basically reshaping your question. How is possible that in Europe we are really basically competing and winning by far on the regulation, let's say, Liga, and we don't it seems that we even don't want to participate to the other Liga, to Innovation Liga. I mean, my first reaction would be that we should, I mean, it's very tempting, and I also fall in this trap, but we should be very careful, in trying to avoiding the trap of the antagonism, innovation versus regulation. There is some truth, there is a trade-off, but there are so many, nuance in this kind of, let's say, of complex ecosystem that just to reduce innovation versus regulation, and unfortunately the dominant narratives in the debate is like this, it's a little bit, frustrating. Why? Because all of you know very well that regulation might be also a good traveling compass for innovation, for example, for a simple reason. If companies do not know which is the legal landscape, they will not invest in something that can change so rapidly. Why? Because they need what is called legal certainty. In order to have legal certainty, you need to inject some legal frame. Now, the second question, much more complicated, is which should be the level of details of such legal frame in order to find a sustainable balance, no, between innovation and regulation, and which has been the choice in Europe. And this is going to your question. The choice has been, let's try to be the first, let's bet on the regulation of the future. How you can regulate the future? Betting basically on the risk assessment. Basically what has been done by GDPR, but especially by AI Act, is betting on the risk of technology, saying basically now, in this moment, this model of AI has a risk that is not admissible, so it's prohibited. Some other models have high risk, some others have minimum risk. But sorry if I play, it's not voluntary, this, let's say, repetition. Which is the risk of this risk-based approach? Which is the risk? The risk is, first of all, and then comes the first answer to your question, a petrification of technology. You know what I mean by petrification of technology? It's like if you make a picture, no, of technology today, even of artificial intelligence, but in 2 years, this technology will clearly change. There is a kind of footnote in the AI Act in which it's clearly said that the European Commission should update the level of high risk. The list of the high-risk models. But are we sure the European Commission, I had a conversation 3 days ago with Roberto Viola and DG Connect in Brussels. They are doing an incredible good job. But you know which is the problem, their problem? Their problem is how vague is written the AI Act. How vague, meaning how general is written in terms of obligations, in terms of definition. Just to be more clear, when you have to deal with terms like systemic risks, like significant harm, but what does it mean exactly? And you know very well why those terms are vague, no? They are vague because they are the consequence of a huge exercise of compromise between Council of Ministry and European Parliament. So more the compromise is difficult, more the term is vague, which is the paradoxical consequence. And then comes again the problem of why in Europe there is not a real investment, I mean with some exception, on artificial intelligence. The paradoxical consequence is that in order to explain what does it mean prohibited risks, is Article 5 of AI Act, you need 140 pages of guidelines of European Commission adopted after the obligation entered into force. I don't know if I'm clear. So basically, in order just to interpret a few sentences, you need 140 pages. You can just put in the skin, in the head of an operator in Europe that want legal certainty. Okay, it wants legal certainty. It doesn't want to be slave of rules that might be basically lead to interpretation by Court of Justice very, very, let's say, fragmented. So my point is that good intentions sometimes do not lead to interesting result. I think that the way in which, and this will be my final word, the way in which the transatlantic, let's say, distance might be reduced, and clearly a lot will depend on the attitude of the American counterpart. I'm not exactly optimistic on this, but speaking, for example, as far as the Biden season was concerned, a good, let's say, compromise was the co-regulation. What does it mean, co-regulation? It means something very, let's say, banal, but I think efficient. Basically, you have a private-public partnership in writing the provisions. What does it mean? It means that you include, as a European regulator, the private companies during the exercise of writing in order to basically be sure that the provisions you are writing will be effective. And this does not mean what is the key word, unfortunately, in the United States: self-regulation, a free marketplace of ideas. It does not mean this. It means let's say, good balance in which there is the know-how of private companies, but within a frame of public regulators in which there is also the possibility of an enforcement, sanctions. And believe me, this can do all the difference in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Oreste. Well, your last words lead me. I think that we have Guido Scorza. I don't see him here. Please, Chair, confirm whether he's with us.
He has arrived, yes, he's with us now.
Okay, so we can move to Guido. And I also would like to get an advice from the chair on the timing. I've been not interrupting or giving warning to our speakers.
Yeah,
but,
can I? No, we need to. We need to stick to time this time because we have a colleague who has to catch a flight, and I think it's very important that we hear her talk as well. So if we can. No. We need to keep her last because she's the one that brings the data, you see. So if I may ask you to keep it brief, if that's okay.
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you once again to Ernesto, to Telefono Azzurro, for asking us a so beautiful question, what the future for our children, for our grandchildren. Let me say that, in my opinion, the most important things here today is that we need to believe that the future is still today in our hand, because too often, in my opinion, we starting believe that the future is written and that technology will write the other part of the future. Behind technology, we have people. Then we are behind technology, we have regulation, we have market. Then we are in the position to change the future, and we are in the position to write a better future for our children. That's in my opinion very, very important. We are in this position as adult, we are in this position as decision maker, we are in this position as journalists. All of us, we are in the condition to change the future for our children. Coming to the matter of this panel and to the question that Oreste and Emilio spoke about before, let me say that for sure I can't stand for the idea that regulation are stopping innovation. That's simply an exercise of someone in some government, normally the government who hosts the big tech, and for someone coming from big tech. That's not true. In the history, normally regulation simply oriented innovation, and oriented innovation in the only way in which innovation has to go, and the way is to maximize the human well-being. That's exactly the role of regulation in the innovation matter. We can speak about how we need to regulate innovation, that's for sure. We need to recognize, and Oreste told very well, that very often we went wrong in the regulation of innovation. We regulate too much, and we still pretend to regulate details in an age in which things runs very, very fast, and it's pretty impossible for regulation to go in deep, to go in details. That's another question, how we need to regulate innovation. But we need to be conscious that it's simply impossible, especially if we are speaking about the interest of child. It's simply impossible to imagine a world without regulation. We need the regulation. We need the regulation to defend right and freedom. That's for sure. Let only me add that here we need to recognize that we have a problem. It's not a problem coming from the antagonism between regulation and innovation. This kind of antagonism simply doesn't exist, as Oreste said. The problem is that child are users. In the internet, in the digital ecosystem, child are more considering as users than as persons. That's a very important problem, because that's the 20 editions of the Safer Internet Day, and in any edition in the last 20 years, we was there, thank you to Ernesto for this, saying exactly the same kind of things. I mean that we need to guarantee to the children a better future. We need to put the children in the center of our discussion, but at the end nothing is really changing. Then here my idea is that we need to use regulation to completely change the things. I mean, we need to impose to market. I'm sorry, Oreste, I'm a super fan of co-regulation, but co-regulation, when we are speaking about children, doesn't work. Doesn't work.
I agree.
Simply because, unfortunately, children are not so important for market, for industry, and also for government. Then, if we try to find, in terms of co-regulation, a solution, we don't find the solution. We are waiting, I think, since 10 years for an age verification tools coming from co-regulation, and still today we are discussing about this matter. Industry doesn't like age verification, because with age verification they risk to lose 1/3 of their users. If we not agree on this very basic principle, we can't move from here. Then I stop here, just saying that I hope that in the next Safer Internet Day, I mean in February 2026, we will meet here again, and we can celebrate the first year of a real age verification tool coming from Europe, coming from Italy, coming from USA, coming from industry or from government. It's not important, but if in 1 year we don't have again an age verification tool, it means that we don't like enough the interest of our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Guido. I have here Ernie Allen. I don't know if we have Ernie as next speaker or...
Now, before, can we welcome Brando Benifei? I believe it's 4 o'clock. He should be with us.
Oh, Brando, yes, here we are.
He's not with us yet. Okay, so please do continue with Ernie Allen in that case. Thank you.
Ernie, great to see you again.
Thank you, Mario. Good to see you.
We have been debating from the European side, a debate between regulation and innovation, where many here in the US think differently. Up to a point, of course, because there is very much the idea that, especially for minors and children, there should be action taken, and we know that this is happening on a bipartisan basis in Parliament, and I will bring some examples of tragedies that have happened already in the application of artificial intelligence with children that have not been monitored adequately. But because here we are talking to, people that are involved in the European regulation and the sort of a macro level, I would like to hear your opinion on this issue. What is the balance between innovation and regulation? Again, nobody says that regulation shouldn't happen. It's key. And we have seen it when we were addressing the issues with you and I, with social platforms that were creating huge issues with children. But coming from America and being an expert on the subject, where do you see the balance between regulation and innovation? Because there may be, in a way, even a contradiction in itself. Innovation comes before regulation rather than vice versa. How do we know to innovate if we are regulated before? Innovation disrupts something that was there in the past, and then regulation comes in. I see that very often here, the point is in order to protect human rights and so on and so forth, but regulation comes first. Does regulation come before innovation?
Well, Mario, I would argue that the operative word is balance. The last thing anybody should suggest is that we should stifle innovation. And I think that quest for balance has been what the whole debate has been about. I'd like to begin by saying that I agree with my friend Emilio Puccio that Europe is not trailing the world. Europe is leading the world. The AI Act is the model for the rest of the world. Now, some think it is too aggressive, too assertive, but the only other example that I see is that Australia has taken steps to limit the use of AI as it relates to child sexual abuse images, to sextortion. But let me say first, there is a massive problem in terms of the vulnerability of children to the use of advanced AI. We're seeing it already. There's an explosion in the problem of sextortion worldwide. Criminal gangs targeting young kids, primarily young boys, persuading them to send sexual images of themselves, which they can then use to extort them for money. The CDC in the United States says that the likelihood that the second leading cause of death among 10 to 14-year-olds is suicide. And a lot of that is a product of that sort of activity. So we're already seeing child sexual abuse material being produced via AI. We're seeing sextortion involving AI. The sextortionist doesn't have to persuade the child to send them a sexual image. All they need is an image of the child. They can, through deepfake technology, through AI, use that. So my argument is that what we should be doing worldwide is seeking a balance. And I would like to echo a term that Professor Pollicini used, and that is the importance of assessing risk. The so-called godfather of AI, Sir Geoffrey Hinton, said that basically we're not going to do anything meaningful until something very nasty happens. So I would like to take us back a quarter of a century as we began the preparation for Y2K. in the late 1990s. Billions of dollars were spent on assessing the risks, taking proactive steps, ensuring that it didn't cause disruption. It was so effective that many people thought the whole thing was a hoax, that there was not a threat to begin with. Well, I would argue that's what we need to be focusing on right now. And we're only, as Professor Pollicini pointed out, we're only 2 to 3 years away from so-called AGI, advanced AI, with the ability to think and reason, and the ability to use those kinds of tools, not just to harm children, but for a variety of things. A Google engineer cited 200 examples, including the use of AI to produce biochemical weapons. So there's a host of risks. I've talked to a lot of university leaders around the world who all tell me the same thing. For a relatively modest amount of money, they can task young PhDs to focus on the risks of advanced AI and prepare for it. Now, to the credit of the Microsofts of the world and OpenAI and Anthropic and others, there are those kinds of efforts underway, including the AI Safety Institute in the United Kingdom. But I think we need to do more of that. We need to prepare for the risks of advanced AI. Now, some cite gloom and doom. Professor Hinton says the likelihood of human extinction through the use of advanced AI is about 10%. Others have said it's as high as 40 or 50%. Well, whether it's 10% or 50% or not at all, there are real risks to people, particularly children, from the use of advanced AI tools, which will have the ability to reason and can be manipulated. So, Mario, that's kind of my view on this. I don't think we've done enough preparation. I don't think we need draconian laws and regulation. I don't want to stifle innovation. But I think there are real risks to humanity, and particularly children, that we need to prepare for.
Thank you, Ernie. And you've been very eloquent, and you know that I share completely your views. My underlying message before, just because I'm very much pro-Europe. I've been a European federalist since the 70s. Unfortunately, I haven't seen my dreams realized yet. Is that on the side of regulation, I would like to see Europe showing its muscle and not being dependent of innovation coming from the United States, from companies like Microsoft, that is here with us and has done a terrific job, and it's in the middle of it. I think we have with us Luigi Del Pino. Is Luigi here?
Yes, he's here with us. Here we are.
Thank you. So, Luigi, we heard from very important and informed expert, the importance of regulation, which I think we all agree for to protect children from this intrusion. Again, I have some examples that are horrid and that will require a great deal of attention. So bring us the voice of Microsoft on this issue. And because you have a double view, you are European and you work for Microsoft, I also would like to hear from you what is the problem with European innovation, and if you think that to be up to date with innovation is equally important to then introduce regulation. And then address what our speakers have said, of course. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And again, thanks to Telefono Azzurro for inviting. I just want to mix it up with the reason why we are today is merely talking about children, and that's, I don't want to miss it, but you're calling out, an industry issue, which is top of mind, especially for an economist. And so I try to combine both and try to understand or help you to understand where is Europe in all this. What I call drama, because every day it's a drama, you open up your news and on AI there's always like a drama, and it seems that the big corporation as much as government or political elites are deciding for that. But the truth is not. It's not like that. What I wanted to concentrate, it's mainly what is the role of the different stock in this AI economy. There are different stocks, which means a different level that produce AI and make AI available. And there is definitely a geopolitical battle within the West and the East of this globe. But there are some roles that cannot be replaced. So just to simplify, I mean, you have a role as a developer, you have a role as a users, and you have also this role about deployers that we don't talk enough. We haven't been talking also during the EU AI Act process, which basically, I mean, took into consideration, but we should have a further discussion on what is the level or the role of the deployer. Now, Europe is behind, not necessarily, not just for the news of today with the investment 200 billion from that France, just announced at the AI summit, but mainly because there's a number of deployers and few developers that in Europe has a relevance. There's a reason why Microsoft has been investing in Mistral. It's a French company, not just OpenAI. Then you can discuss how much money do we put in OpenAI, but that was back in 2019, which is like 2 decades of the new IT ecosystem, because before we were just reasoning in 5 years, 3 years. Now 3 years is even too much. Every year is so different. But we've been investing in a French company, it's Mistral, and we're developing models that are for Europe, for Europeans, and they're based in Europe. But definitely you cannot be a developer, because in the developer we are 40, maybe 50 years behind. There's no way, to catch up with that. The announcement that you just mentioned about the 80 billions, it added to the 30 plus billions that we have already invested. It's all about infrastructure. So we're not talking about creating new models. This is just about making sure that we have infrastructure where these models can work. And so basically, those are the big money of investment. There is no state, no country that can even start investing that amount. And frankly speaking, it's too behind. We don't need that. Then the perception about Europe is consumer. It's big consumer. Why? Because we are so diversified. We have different culture, different language, different behaviors, and this is the best about having such a big consumer market. It's only Europe can have it. And so take advantage of about 500 million of people who can use technology. But this is not actually our role. It should not be our role in the futures. And then there is this new role, which is not new, but it's how you're going to adapt this model into your industry, into your economy, which is about deployers. Deployers are the ones that are adapting or creating language model on the vertical side. So whether it's industry, like culture, tourism, everything that we have in Europe, they don't have elsewhere. And this is an enrichment that we never concentrate enough. But this is actually what is happening. And this is why regulation is to understand what is going on in Europe, where we have the best example of large language model created in the industry sectors. And we go from pharma, which is Europe, manufacturing, which is Europe, mechatronic is Europe, tourism, it's Europe. And these are the models that they have been created using a language model, the large language model, like it could be ChatGPT, DeepSeek, take whatever you like, but then adapting to our model and creating and patenting the new model for some of the industry sector. This is the role of Europe. And this is the role that, not just regulation, but our constituencies in Brussels should help creating the best example of industry success, which is our success as Europeans. And then it comes to regulation. We need regulation, especially for children. I would love to give you, but if we have more time maybe later. The numbers of the Safer Internet Day research that we published today, but you can get access on the web and you can look at yourself, but you see how much is increasing the numbers of generative AI impacting children. It's definitely devastating. It's a risk. So you can take a responsible AI approach, this is fine, but we need a legal framework. When I say legal framework, is that we have a number of processes that have been happening already, and nobody mentioned the exam regulation, whether it's voluntary or mandatory detection, but we need, and we are open for a mandatory detection. We need to understand, I mean, what is the trade-offs with the privacy, especially when it comes to privacy to children, but Guido, he's the most expert here and can help, and definitely the DPA was the first one, especially the Italian one, to raise this issue at European and international level. But we need that regulation, but need to be fast. That's the issue. And especially now with the US administration, he's not talking a deregulation, and all he's saying is provocative, let me say, but it's equal, we need to do it fast. Because, I mean, it's evolving so fast, I mean, the technology, that it's very hard to keep the pace on that. And again, we don't want to fall into a number of legislation that then are not enacted, and we have great examples, especially in this country. That's what we don't want to. So we have to simplify and make it simple, and not just for children, not just for adults, but this is, think about in the industry level for the small, medium enterprise. If a small company has to fill it up 140 pages, it's dead. For big multinationals, wherever they come from, it's easy. They have people, they have investments. But let's think about the last one, because those ones are the ones that need the help. So it's fine, regulation. We've been the first one to advocate, Brett Smith said, public in 2017, so we started many years ago, 7 years ago, to advocate for global AI regulation, walking with principles, but what's the behind? Even if Europe, I mean, definitely can flag as the best AI, because it's a risk-based AI regulation, but it's not enough.
Thank you. Pierluigi, if I may add to your statement, considering you're representing an American company, the Biden administration has been very much ahead of the game in trying to create a framework where everybody would come together to regulate. I would say, I'm not sure whether it was or it wasn't, but maybe the objective it was, as Ernie Allen was saying, in a balanced way. We have a new administration now that seems to be totally unaware on this need. And in fact, we've seen internet companies limiting the work that they were doing on privacy and so on and so forth. Can you enlighten us about what is your impression that what's happening now in the US? Because this may make the dialogue a little bit more difficult, number one. And number two, why so many companies operating in your industries have been resisting some of the most elementary requests to try to protect children from abuses on the internet?
Let me say, we were used to the Anglo-Saxon way of developing regulation, which is through governance. And while in Europe, we were governing, I mean, which means we were doing the regulation, we were translating governance into regulation. And that's why now we assisted to a new model in US with less governance, and try to, again, mostly provoke, but taking hard position. And I think we have to not resist, but to be very careful in taking our decision, especially because a few years ago we had completely opposite. We took opposite decisions, so we don't want to go against our government, definitely. But we have to pose down. That's what, at least in Microsoft, with them. I mean, we decided not to show up at the inauguration with our nice faces in there. We're not in opposition, but we just want to see exactly, I mean, what is the decision will be taken, and then try to adopt. That's, I think, is our role. I mean, and not taking as a provocative whatever is coming from the US, but taking, I mean, the best part of the message, which is about let's do it in speed and be active and be very concrete. We are not at the time, whether it's affecting children or any adult, to pause and keep talking about the regulation if we are not doing something in concrete. Again, but it's a very delicate and sensitive issue, and I see you.
Thank you so much. Do we have Brando Bonifaci now? I not
Yes,
being
we do.
present there.
We do. Benifei.
Hi. Yes.
Okay. Hello,
Hi.
Brando. Great to see you. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you very well. Can you hear me?
Wonderful. We can hear you very well. We had a very interesting debate about balance between innovation and regulation, and the fact that Europe was lagging behind in innovation, even if, as we were told just now, there is also the category of deployers, which is not irrelevant and very important. But where do you stand? We heard that there was an announcement today coming from the European Commission about investing lots of money into artificial intelligence. But where do you stand as a European parliamentarian on this debate? The floor is yours. Thank you, Brando.
Thank you very much. My name is Brando Benifei. As you know, I am both the vice chair of the Children Rights Intergroup of the European Parliament, but also the rapporteur of the AI Act, of the first law in the world dealing horizontally with artificial intelligence, and now chairing the monitoring group of the Parliament on the implementation of the AI Act itself, which was very much also influenced by dialogue with different stakeholders, including the ones involved in the meeting today, to make the use of AI safer and of the internet that is now more and more AI powered, safe for vulnerable groups, including children. I'm connected from the station in Paris. I'm going to Strasbourg because I was attending the AI summit here in Paris, where von der Leyen made the announcement you just mentioned of a new investment on AI. And I have to say that it's very important that EU, with the push coming from this summit, is taking new initiatives following, I would say, what the Draghi report was suggesting of building more investment in infrastructure for digital and more access to capital for developing an EU ecosystem of AI. But what is also very relevant, I would say, is that in these days there was a lot of discussion with many countries in the world about what kind of model we want for AI and for internet. And today we know that there is also an attack to the idea of having rules, of having limits to how we deal with the digital space. But we see also a lot of support coming from different stakeholders and different countries outside Europe to the model we tried to build, a model based on a human-centric approach, on the protection of vulnerable groups, on the protection of children. I don't have to explain to you the importance of regulation of the digital space and of AI to fight pedopornography, just to mention one among the topics, but also, and I mentioned a topic I've been working a lot myself on, the cyberbullying topic that becomes extremely easy, extremely pervasive, extremely problematic with the use of deepfakes generated by AI. And if we do not follow rules, we will not be able to have a digital space that is protective enough for children. So the balance between initiative and regulation is very important to be found, and what we have been approving as European Union are rules that are not against innovation. I completely refuse this idea that they are against innovation, because this is not what I get from the EU AI developers. The EU AI developers tell me they need infrastructure and they need capital. They are only, as a third issue, worried about how to implement legislation. And in fact, we are taking time now to implement gradually with an accompanying process, the AI Act, so that we can accompany the businesses, but also make our users of AI, that will be more and more schools, educational organizations, civil society structures, the healthcare system, the public institutions, just to mention a few contexts where the interaction with vulnerable groups, including children, will be continuous. And so having safe AI that is checked based on parameters linked to the quality and appropriateness of data, cybersecurity, human control will be more and more important. So, and I conclude on this, a strong message comes from this summit that EU wants to invest more and engage, but doesn't renounce to its model that probably is not liked by some structures and organizations that can gain money from being without rules. But we do not want to abandon our model that is based on certain values, including the protection of minors. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Brando, if I may ask to change your role from Europarliamentary and become a correspondent, can you give us a feeling of how the meeting went? You were there, it just happened. There was a huge debate. That could be interesting to hear your voice. What was your impression? Some of the most important players, not just from a government viewpoint and country viewpoint, but also from the industry viewpoint were there. Can you briefly tell us what it was?
Yeah.
It could help us.
Yeah. I mean, very briefly, I can say that this summit doesn't account to big advancement in terms of global cooperation or governance. It accounts to important announcements, both from the European Commission and the French government, for example, but also some positioning from US Representative Vice President Vance that, as expected, has criticized the EU rule book, but it also was very clear about the need to cooperate to contrast authoritarianism. I think this is an important area of cooperation. And in fact, I would say it's more like a moment of taking stock of what has been done. In fact, in these years, we have built many initiatives, not only the legislative initiative at European level, but also cooperation in G7, G20, OECD, UN. We have built different frameworks to cooperate internationally on AI. Some of them very important for the topics you're touching today, like the so-called Hiroshima process that was launched during the G7 in Japan and continued in the G7 in Italy to put some minimal rules applicable everywhere in the world to the transparency of AI-generated content, which again will be very important to contrast forms of child exploitation and cyberbullying, just to give an example. So,
and was this debated in Paris? Did it come up? Was that part of the debate, protection of children, which is
it was debated in some events where I participated. It was not very much, to be honest, in the main speakers' agenda, in the government representatives and big CEOs, not very much. But this is because it's the civil society and the parliaments that have to push for this. Because to be frank, governments, unfortunately, are concentrated on other issues, also very important, but to my conviction, they are not enough attentive to this. And the business, yes, they can accept certain codes of conduct, but they need also to be pushed by a more robust initiative coming from the public side, both civil society and public institutions. As I said, the general message was we are not going backwards, which was already quite important due to what was happening also in these weeks in the world. So we are not going backwards. We have already many established frameworks. We need to be prepared for a new evolution stage of AI, and we build some basis for further work. So no big advancement, to be frank, but no backtracking and ongoing initiatives continuing. And that's why EU has to continue working and bridging the investment gap that it has, because I think with our model that is based on certain values, if we are more competitive, we can also be a force for good for a more ethical AI deployment, also looking at children's rights.
Thank you, Honorable Bonifay.
Thank you very much.
So much for your
Thank you very much.
For your thoughts, and especially for having told us that this event that has been organized by Ernesto and the others on the organizing committee is incredibly important and complementary, because in Paris, this issue that we are debating here has not been addressed much. So it's interesting to see how from Rome this message comes out, and it's so important. And it brings us to our last panelist, Roberta Mestichella, who is Vice Questore in charge of protecting children. And Vice Questore, good day to you. I am seeing you from far away, from New York and through the screen.
Yes, nice to meet you.
Can I
Nice
just
to meet
quickly
you. So
say, she's not quite the last. Our last is Sandra Cortesi. We have one more because we had to shift her to the previous one, just so you're aware, Mario.
Oh, okay, thank you so much.
I will be very short.
You will update it with that. But you are on the front line. You deal every day with crimes that are committed against children.
Yes.
You have a panelist of people that have been working on regulations and how to help you to get the tools.
Yes, in fact, I listened with a lot of attention to all of these, everything we talked about. We talked about regulation, competition, investments, privacy, a lot of food for thought for me. And we are, as a police force, we are called to use the legislative tools and technological tools to that are at our disposal for a safer internet for new generations and present generations. But who are the new generation? Are children and teens that need to be protected and present and future digital citizens that lives in a world that is deeply connected and have a strong online projection of their social life in schools, friends, in their normal routine. These are children and teens that are exposed continuously to the digital environment, and they use it daily from an early age, where technologies and devices are natural part of their present and their future. So technologies are really a game changer in our daily lives. And also we include AI, of course, but sometimes can be used to harm, and this is where we intervene in terms of prevention and contrast. And I, as a part of postal police, yes, we do have in Italy specific laws that gives us competencies and specific jurisdiction on certain type of crimes, especially when we talk about minors. We were established in 1998 with the specific task to protect minors from online harms. And yes, when we think about the phenomenon.
As a law enforcement, what is the biggest challenge?
The biggest challenge is
biggest challenge in protecting these children, and what kind of help?
Yes, challenge protecting these children is the misuse of technology and also AI. Let's think about the misuse of AI for create deep fake exam material, or to create synthetic exam, or also false identity profiles to use for grooming, use for sextortion, use for other crimes that can be related to cyberbullying, as also Ernie said before. And the main challenge is for us to find a balance between AI and natural intelligence. And this goes through the empowerment of people, empowerment also of children, starting from a very early age in the digital environment. How do we try to do this? Increasing their digital literacy, grasp and then enhancing their online safety, and supporting them when they want to report grooming or exploitation. An activity that needs not only the effort of a police enforcement, a law enforcement agency, but also the synergy of other institutions and other stakeholders of the private sector or the NGOs. And in this direction, our activity in terms of prevention is to carry out a lot of digital education in schools through cyber initiative and cyber awareness initiatives and campaigns with the aim to educate children to recognize, to be aware of what they can encounter online while they use naturally internet, starting from the very young people. And we do this with operators that are specifically trained for this. And they do, we do specific sessions to make, to make that can be lo stesso in tutta Italia, volevo dire, the same, yeah, in the whole of Italy for all the operators of the postal police, because we have a very wide presence on the territory with 100 field offices, and through these operators that are exclusively committed to this, we go to schools and to parents, to companies, to make them aware of this.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I hear we have another speaker, is that correct?
I'm very conscious that Emilio has to leave us, so I wanted to give him perhaps a final comment before he goes. If you have anything to add to this debate, Emilio, and then we move on to Sandra. If Emilio is still there. Emilio, are you with us? I think he's probably left. Okay, well, the floor is yours, Sandra. You've been waiting very patiently. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for having me, Professor Caffo. I am now based at the Technical University of Munich, but I was the last 15 years based at a law school in the United States. And there I learned that as a psychologist, I better try not to get too much into regulation, but I will try to connect a couple of themes that I heard today and yesterday also in Milan. You asked a good provocation, so how do we balance or how do we at least think about innovation? And for me as a psychologist, innovation has a number of parameters, one of which is the mindset of people. And so here is an observation from the last 2 days. You said earlier, I think, or someone said earlier, we should not go back, and it's in our hands, you said, and we should not go back, said someone else. But many of the sessions this morning were focused on how many things can we remove from a young person's life. On one hand, yes, we talk about risks and how to reduce risks, which I totally get, but a lot of the conversation was about removing devices, how to remove phones, limit access. And so what I want to use my 5 minutes that I have is a thought exercise, a mind exercise. Kind of, I don't know if you have ever been to one of those conferences where in the middle they make you do yoga. I hate it when they do it, but this is kind of a mindset yoga that we're going to do because I was supposed to speak in the morning in front of 50 young people, and now I have you lovely panelists here. Okay, so again, I'm a psychologist. I did extensive research to figure out what is well-being in 2025. And so we spoke today on this panel, but also in the morning, a lot about how do we enhance the well-being of young people in today's age. And so this mapping helped us understand that there are 8 domains, which you see here on the slide, which are well-being relevant. So if you want to improve a young person's well-being, you have 8 areas within which you can make a difference. I spoke yesterday about mental health, so I do not want to bore Ernesto and Elena. So I'm switching the topic today, and I would love to focus on social interactions or relationships. As a psychologist, there is lots of evidence that suggests the more relationships, the more friends, the more trusted people in your life you have, the better for you, the better for a child. So that's the premise for the yoga exercise. And so the exercise is, what is if we switch the narrative from what can we remove to what can we add? And so here's maybe a slight provocation. I asked my students, let's see if this actually works. This did not work in the morning, so I should, no, okay. So I asked my students and said, what are all the relationships you have in your life, relationships you currently have or you wish to have? So you see a number of boxes here, and you don't have to essentially read them, but they go from friends to artists to celebrities, sports teammates, and so forth. There were twice as many boxes on the slide until you told me it's too small, and why is there a ballerina? So there are many relationships a young person has, but I will bring it back to AI. How can we connect the topic of relationships with the topic of technology? So a provocation is 4 relationships contributed, made, or intersecting with AI. Let's see. The first one. What would it be if you would have an AI friend? So on this slide, you see the example of Replica. Replica is an AI agent, has more than 30 million worldwide users. And in the circle, you see some of the functionalities you can have Replica for. You can have her as a friend, as a girlfriend, as a wife, or as a sister. At Stanford, they did a study with 1,000 students that used Replica for a period of time and could demonstrate that through the use of Replica, young people's well-being, particularly mental health and particularly the thoughts of suicide, could be reduced. So this is one example as a friend. Second example, sorry for the font issues here. Second example is, what if you could have an AI romantic partner? You see here on this slide an example of a Chinese internet celebrity that falls in love with ChatGPT. And it's a truly amazing, unbelievable, touching story where through videos she documents the love story she has with ChatGPT and even brings her partner to the beach and shares essentially the whole experience. For her, we may think it's strange. That's why I said it's a thought exercise, but for her, it's a very well-being enhancing, meaningful experience. Third example is, okay, let's switch from humans to something else. I have a cat. I love my cat. It improves my well-being significantly. What if I could have my cat forever? Or I could have more than one cat and replicate my cat. It would help me a lot. It would actually improve my well-being. So what about an example like that? How about having a better relationship with yourself? This is an example from Reid Hoffman, founder of LinkedIn, who built one of the first AI twins, essentially a replica of himself, his knowledge based on all his books and all the talks he gave. I really recommend you to check it out. But what would it be if you could replicate yourself and in moments of doubt have a conversation with yourself? Would that be something we would want our children to do? Would that be something we would think would be overall well-being enhancing? Last example is this, made by a student of mine. I showed it yesterday already, so I apologize. But my student Anu, she knows my grandmother passed away. I gave her a picture of my grandmother, And today I cannot show videos, but Anu made this amazing version of my grandmother of a still image. She animated my grandmother and made her talk to me, give me a hug, and all these very touching and emotional actions. It really, for me, it was overwhelming at the beginning, but it really improved my well-being. And so, what's the point of these several examples? When it comes to young people's well-being and how it intersects with artificial intelligence, there is still a lot to learn. I have been doing this for more than 15 years, but there are still so many questions I have, the answers to the ones I asked today, that I do not have. And I think, I wish, maybe my hope is, and if we meet again in 1 year, that we can come up with some of the answers for these questions in partnership with young people. Because I think they would have a tremendously valuable perspective to add, and they are rarely part of this conversation, which to me is a missed opportunity. So I hope this was 5 minutes of thought yoga, and I gave you something to think about. Thank you so much.
Sandra, thank you so much. It was very interesting. We talked about this yesterday, in fact. And there are, of course, many sides to the story, and you gave us some positive ones. I also lost my grandmother, who I loved, and I also lost my lovely dog, who I loved, called Juno. Ernesto knew Juno. I don't know that I would like to have an artificial intelligence reproducing them. I just prefer to have them in my memory and go on. I have a new dog now called Nix, but of course, everybody is different, and I take perfectly well your point. That may be very comforting. But in terms of relationship and developing love relationship, there is very much of a dark side to it. And I will bring you the example of Sewell Garcia, who was a 14-year-old, and this brings us back to the point of Ernie about children being very vulnerable, especially at a young age. 14 years old, this young boy was 14 years old. He developed a love story with a fictional character developed by artificial intelligence and by a specific platform that does only that, to attract youngsters in relationships, making them believe that they are involved with the relationship. This particular relationship was with a fictional character, sort of a hero character that was in another planet. The boy fell in love with her, a princess, and in order to reach her, after the conversation, he committed suicide. Of course, this is what we were talking about. Suicide is very high. So how would you respond to the mother of this young man, Megan Garcia, who will be coming shortly to Rome because there will be a mass in the Cappella Clementina in the Vatican to celebrate him at a year of distance of this. So did you study also that side and how we can intervene to protect those children? Sandra, thank you.
Yes, so first of all, I would say to her that I am really sorry for her loss. Losing a child is probably the worst thing that can happen to you in your life, and this should not happen. We should work on building things, ideally again in partnership with young people. I wish such tools would be actually co-designed and co-developed with young people so we can test them and see how they are using them and what their flaws are and how we can build guardrails for it. So these things should not happen, but I think if we take our favorite innovation, each of us would name our favorite innovation. There are many tragic examples that we can name connected to that. And that is concerning and that we are working towards, and we heard 3, 4, 5, 6 panelists that spoke about how we are trying to address the risks, how we are trying to do the right thing and regulate in a European kind of manner. But I think for the same types of innovation, there might be so many positive stories and so many good stories, so many children we can actually help through the exact same technological innovation So how do we actually then balance some very tragic uses of it with many, many positive ones we could see? Is that the reason we should say maybe no, let's hold on, and that could be one decision we come, one conclusion we come to that conclusion we come, but maybe we say, well, we have to do things in parallel. We have to improve the technology, but also encourage kind of its use. I don't know.
Thank you so much, Sandra. That was very, very interesting. I think I would like to ask Ernie to intervene and to respond to Sandra, because that was a very interesting proposition she had, and I wonder what your position would be on this. Is it right to create fake sentiments for young people, and will it help them?
I think in terms of basic psychology, it is. What we're trying to do is empower children, to help them come to grips with the challenges around them. But I think your point is a very relevant one. What we're seeing, particularly with new AI tools, is people manipulating children by making them think that they're somebody other than they are. I mentioned sextortion. The FBI reported that's increased 7,200%. There are now gangs, particularly in places like Cote d'Ivoire and Nigeria, who are targeting young children in North America and Europe and elsewhere by persuading them that, primarily this is targeted to young boys, using images of young girls, persuading them that they are young girls. So I think there is that kind of reality education that we need to bring to kids. But I think purely from a mental health viewpoint, the kinds of tools that Dr. Cortese laid out are important. But again, we have to find a way to do that without inadvertently exposing kids to risk.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ernie. I wonder whether we have moved already in the next panel, because I had Sandra in the following panel, but I think we should adjourn. It's already almost 10 to 5, so we're running a little late. So I would move into the next panel with Elena, if it's all right with our chairman. Shall we proceed?
Yeah, whilst we're switching panelists, we have a video that we would like to share with you in the background. Thank you, Mario, and I will be the next. And thank you to all the panelists. Have a safe flight, Sandra. I think they deserve a round of applause. Whilst we're setting up the video, can I invite the next panelists to join me, please? Federico, please sit next to me if you wish. And Caterina Flick, nice to meet you, please. Stiamo aspettando il video. Eccolo.
I have to tell you something. Please don't be angry with me.
I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner.
I just didn't know how to say it. I was scared of how he'd react. I remember the day it happened. At first, I didn't understand. A boy at my school sent me this picture. It didn't make any sense. I didn't take that photo. The next day, everyone was messaging me. The boys in my class kept sending me these pictures. All night. It was a nightmare. The pictures were fake. They looked so much like me. They looked so real that everyone thought I took them. My friends wanted me to tell a teacher or someone at school. I couldn't do that. Then they would tell my parents. What if they didn't believe me? What if they thought I actually took those photos? I was so embarrassed. The messages got worse. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. All I could think about were these photos and what everyone was saying about me. I felt so lost. Everything in that moment changed. I don't think I'll ever be happy again.
Funziona? Sì. I think the number that really resonates with all of us is that 300 million children are affected by, you can hear me. Better? Yes. Ooh. think the number that resonates with us is that 300 million children are affected by AI and nudify apps and the creations of indecent images as a result. This video was shown to us for the first time in Abu Dhabi last December, and I'm really pleased that you shared it with the audience today because it's incredibly powerful. And not only that, I think it links really well with my topic and what I'm going to share with you today. So I'm Professor Elena Martellozzo. I'm full Italian, but have lived in the UK for many years. And I direct the Centre for Abuse and Trauma Studies at Middlesex University in London. And I work very closely with Scotland Yard, the Metropolitan Police, and many other police forces in the United Kingdom and across Europe. So as a criminologist, which is what I am, I tend to bring mostly bad news because crime is not pleasant. People tend to get really excited when I talk about crime, but when you're dealing with any crime, you're also dealing with victims, and you're dealing with offenders as well, who often are victims. So I also have a couple of videos to show you, just really brief, just to highlight what children are able and capable of doing. And this was, and I have to give credit to one of our students who put these two videos very quickly together, I would say probably in less than 5 minutes. So se posso avere il video, per favore, il primo. Le slide, sì. Sì. Nella seconda slide c'è anche un piccolo video, molto breve, una videoclip. I call it The Kiss. Batman and the actor were made to kiss in the space of 2 minutes with a simple up. Il prossimo, per favore. The next one is a... Può fermarlo? The next one is a model, a Chinese model, very famous. I'm not sure if you know her. She obviously is very famous amongst my students. And what they thought of her was she's an amazing dancer. But she didn't think that Taylor Swift could dance as well. So what they did, they superimposed the Chinese dancer and made Taylor Swift dancing better. Again, very quickly and very simply by a student of mine. Now, what does that mean? What are the reflections of this? As I said, as a criminologist, I always bring or tend to bring the bad news. These applications are utilized by children as well as offenders. We've seen in the We Protect video that young people are using these applications to embarrass their friends, to humiliate friends, and to create nudes without fully appreciating that what they're creating are indecent images of children. And they can risk to be, reported to the police. But these apps are also used by offenders, as we learned, to create indecent images of children. And we say indecent images, the term child pornography is no longer accepted because it's diminified the importance and the seriousness of the crime. And what it does, it minimizes a lot of aspects of the abuse. The next slide, please, if I may. I also have some good news. We've been talking about, regulations. We heard from our colleagues in Europe, in Strasbourg. The UK, which is where I reside, where I live, has just recently made some really good advancement in legislation and has revolutionized technology and introduced a new risk to children, which means that it's generated a new application. What is the UK response to this? They've decided to make some changes, legal changes. So the UK has become the first country in the UK to criminalize AI tools. So here we're not talking about offenders or images which are already legal, but the tools which create these potential immersive images. And the key measures that they've also introduced is that they've banned the possession, the creation, and the distribution of any AI models for CSAM. Hence, I couldn't really share with you today some of the images that have been given to present to this audience, because it's now illegal to possess them and to share with anyone. How have these images been created? I think it's important for us to think about this. What does that mean? AI CSAM has become, or is becoming even, more easier to create. We've seen that offenders are using these applications to create them. And you know, my job is really to focus on crime, focus on offenders, to stop these crimes from continuing to spread and develop, to prevent crimes from spreading and develop. They've also have accepted that the creation of training and visual manuals, which are very present in the dark web, and are utilized by offenders on how to train themselves in the development of these images. This is, again, something that offenders often do. Where do they find these tools, and how do they proliferate the depiction of children? This happens mostly in the dark web. And also what they've banned, they banned this new legislation, any guidance to create these images. So this is a first step forward, and it's incredibly important for the UK, and I hope that it continues as well in Europe. Now, we've seen the growth of AI harm. We've talked extensively about it today. We've seen how offenders can manipulate children into either participating, but I think what I would like really to share with you is the sad truth that the great majority of images that have been removed from the online space, recently, I would say probably around 70% were created by children. And here I think it's an emergent issue, meaning that what we really have a responsibility to do is not necessarily, in my view, to ban and stop them from utilizing these apps, but to use them creatively and to perhaps share more those We Protect videos that have been created. Because I believe that what the internet has done has increased the distance between the offender and the victim. So individuals don't often realize the harm that they do to others by sharing an image, by sharing a text, as we've seen in sexting. I know that you and your colleagues have focused a lot on this, and it has really accelerated this process of abuse. So really the debate continues. It continues over the severity of harm caused by AI-generated CSAM. And the risk remain very significant, as we've seen. What it also done, and this is my very last slide, I promise, why is it important to tackle this? And why is it important to ensure that images are obviously first of all removed, and these images are first of all made illegal? Is because what it does, it lowers barriers amongst offenders. If we leave them there, and I had a question yesterday, very interesting question, someone asked me, but AI CSAM could be utilized by sex offenders voluntarily to stop them from abusing children further. Well, we know that the process of abuse is exacerbated not by showing more images, but by stopping the process of abuse. So if we allow these images to be created and to exist, we're just expanding this issue even further. What it also does, it makes a process of, as we call it here, and this is a very old theory by Matzai-Sky, a process of neutralization. As we mentioned before, increasing the distance between the offender and the victim, as if there's no pain inflicted. And finally, I don't think we talked, yeah, we did talk about money, we did talk about how much those companies are making, but also vendors are creating images for a financial incentive. And this is evident within the dark web, where there's an exchange of money, there's a monetary money-making profit by generating these images. I think today we talked about many things, and we've touched upon regulations, we touched upon young people, putting them at the center. For me, it's very much around awareness, working obviously with law enforcement and educators, but educating the educators as well, because these are new challenges. And when I have tried, because I visit schools a lot and I engage with young people, these are topics that are not always very welcome in public spaces. And I know they're very challenging and they're very difficult to talk with the right language, but it's important that we share what the harm is hidden behind the production of indecent images that are AI generated. And I'm happy to conclude here. Mario?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Lovely. This was very interesting. We chatted about this yesterday. I understand that it's complicated to show some of the harshest videos that you had described to me yesterday. Moving to the current panel, I would like to bring up the book of Jonathan Haidt, The Anxious Generation, which addresses some of these issues. And you clearly are ringing a big bell here of warning. One of the main propositions he has is to make sure the children at a certain age, when they're younger, do not use the cellular phone, or are very limited in that. And that has had a great impact here in the United States. Many parents are aware of it, and there's been a great debate around it as an additional tool, besides regulation and everything else, to start to intervene, how to limit this risk when we hear, like Ernie mentioned, statistics that say that certain crimes have increased 7,200% just in a matter of years or even 1 year. So I would start with you, but I would ask also the other panels in the course of their thoughts, maybe to address what they think about the message of this book that has had a deep impression in the United States by Jonathan Haidt. So Elena, what do you think about his suggestion?
I think there's a lot of anxiety amongst parents, and we heard it today. Not directly from parents, but from parliamentaries, from experts. There is a lot of anxiety as well from law enforcement, because we are concerned. There's so much that can be done, and I think there's also an element of anxiety, but for different reasons, from the tech industry. Young people are also, to an extent, anxious, but I think we are more anxious than they are. They live their life digitally by default. I'm just referring back to COVID, whereby they were forced to be educated online. They were forced to socialize online. They had no other options. There might be another COVID around the corner. I hope not. But what about if it does happen? Instead of removing, in my view, it's important, or perhaps we can think about it together. Perhaps we need to address some of those issues with them, to pilot some ideas that it would be happy to be included in developing, some interventions. We heard from my colleague, Sandra Cortese, who herself works with children and young people all the time. And it's important to involve them and to hear their voices and to, initiate this activation and participation in what we develop. And I don't necessarily think that this anxiety is all tech-related. It is generational, perhaps. But we all have to remember that, and I think we all agree, not just children, but we also very much dependent on our devices. This morning, I was observing that, we had some parliamentary talking about, young children are struggling with attention. And then I watched them, everybody after they finished their speech, they were straight on their mobile phone. So we are too anxious in that case. Are we anxious or are we enjoying our devices? I personally enjoy my digital life. I'm not quite sure if I would want to have a twin sister or a twin me. I'm not sure. I've never tried it. Perhaps it's time to test it and see if it would work.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I would follow the order that I have here, and I have Joanna Rubinstein and then Travis. Is Joanna with us?
No, she's not. I don't think she's linked yet.
Okay.
So we got Travis.
We move on to Travis, who's here with us. Travis, what is your? Good to see you. First of all, thank you for being with us.
I remember meeting you in.
Yeah. So we heard. We had many positions. Your center, of course, is at the forefront of this. What is your response to what we were hearing from Elena and to Jonathan Haidt's proposition as additional?
No, I think it's very interesting. I mean, obviously the urgency and the top of mind is on these topics are definitely pervasive and there. I mean, what I wanted to do was talk a little bit about LICMEC's programming and how through our work, in the community across governments, law enforcement, private sector, and academia and others, how is it expressing itself? I mean, Google AI, for instance, their accelerator grant application round was yesterday. And we've submitted something there, and hopefully, let's see. I mean, there's obviously one application. We use the concept in the program for more than that. But I'd like to talk about AI as someone living in Silicon Valley most of the time as well. I'd like to talk about sort of the applied side. What can we do to deal with some of the things that were presented and also address this anxiety that's being talked about? And I mean, I think for me, I see there's the way to deal with the actual, what is AI? What are we talking about that can make a difference, right? I mean, the authentication and age verification is one that was mentioned earlier. There's also things around digital payment and fraud prevention and using that transaction piece to deal with it. A third one, which we saw in the videos here, is content moderation and how do you, what can be done with AI, hashtags, et cetera, for, dealing with yellow, red, block, ban, allow flags there. Another thing is think of all the real-time data and the applications that our children and our parents are using. And so it's working with those as well and seeing how AI can be developed. And then the fifth one I want to talk about, which is obviously very pervasive, it's been come up several times, is the whole mental health issue, right? So dealing with that and dealing with well-being and, addressing that in different ways. How can we streamline that? And then sort of overall, the sort of, I would say the largest issue is sort of broadest issue, pervasive issue, is the ethical AI side. And on one side, we're talking about bias, and I would love to see sort of child sandboxes where the child and the voice of the child, the smile of the child, is dealt with. You know, I've talked to people using some of these Alexa type Amazon boxes, where even they are seeking less bias and more input, I would say. So anyway, those are sort of the I would say the child safety focused AI solutions that we need to be and we are working on. I guess the last thing I want to say is, and this is coming from the private sector, the social media platforms, is we also need to think about opportunities to work with what they have going on with youth. Most of the Snaps and the Metas, I mean, the big ones obviously have what they call youth advisory councils. I think this is a very powerful tool to not only engage with youth, but also connect some of the dots that I talked about earlier at the AI level. And then the other piece is really those influencers. I mean, the influencers on social media platforms like TikTok that are talking to youth, that are the ones even doing some of like the examples of dancing and Taylor Swift. What role can they play for the awareness, the education, but even more than that, prevention, et cetera? So that's my message for MCMEC here in Alexandria, Virginia. Thank you.
Mario. Troppi microfoni. Mario, sei con noi? Ah, forse abbiamo perso Mario, mi sa. Ok. Intanto continuiamo. Sì, abbiamo un messaggio allora di Antonella Sberna. Grazie.
Buongiorno a tutti, cari amici, colleghi e ospiti. Mi spiace non poter essere con voi di persona oggi, ma purtroppo, come vedete, sono impegnata a Strasburgo per i lavori parlamentari. Tuttavia, ci tenevo molto a portare il mio contributo a questa discussione che riguarda la sicurezza dei nostri bambini nel mondo digitale, un tema che ci tocca tutti profondamente, inevitabilmente. Ringrazio Telefono Azzurro per questo invito e per la lunga collaborazione che va avanti da anni e in veste di parlamentare europeo, ma soprattutto da vicepresidente del Parlamento europeo, intendo portarla avanti, poiché all'interno del Parlamento ci sono strumenti che possono sostenere e tutelare i minori in questo mondo sempre più digitalizzato. Il Safer Internet Day 2025 è un'occasione preziosa per fare il punto sulle sfide legate alla protezione delle nuove generazioni. La sicurezza dei più giovani online non è solo un obiettivo, ma io credo sia una responsabilità collettiva di tutti noi. Ognuno di noi è chiamato a fare la propria parte per costruire un internet più sicuro e protetto per i bambini. Viviamo in un mondo in cui i bimbi sono cresciuti con uno smartphone in mano, dove l'accesso alla rete è parte integrante della loro vita fin dai primi anni di vita. Ciò offre opportunità straordinarie perché chiaramente hanno un approccio molto più smart alle tecnologie, ma anche enormi rischi. La tecnologia può arricchire le loro esperienze, ma può anche trasformarsi in una minaccia se non è affrontata con la giusta consapevolezza. E le domande che tutti noi genitori ci facciamo, ci poniamo riguardo a come proteggere i bambini da contenuti dannosi, dalla manipolazione dei dati e dalle insidie del web, e come possiamo trasformare queste sfide in opportunità, sono quesiti che ci poniamo e a cui rispondere è necessario un cambiamento, per cui rispondere è necessario un cambiamento di mentalità. Prima di tutto dobbiamo lavorare insieme per implementare gli strumenti di verifica delle età più efficaci affinché i bambini accedano a contenuti appropriati a seconda della propria età, chiaramente. Non possiamo accontentarci di risposte superficiali come è sicuro, è moderato. Dobbiamo garantire trasparenza, sicurezza e protezione dei dati in ogni singolo contenuto. È un lavoro importante, ma lo dobbiamo fare. E poi, come sempre, l'educazione è la chiave. Non possiamo pensare di risolvere tutto con la tecnologia. È fondamentale che i genitori, gli insegnanti, tutta la comunità educante, gli adulti coinvolti nell'educazione di ogni bambino li guidino verso un uso consapevole del digitale, aiutandoli a riconoscere i pericoli e a proteggere chiaramente anche la loro privacy. La protezione dei dati personali è essenziale, ma lo è altrettanto il diritto dei bambini a crescere liberi da manipolazioni esterne. Le piattaforme digitali devono essere responsabili e fare tutto il possibile per evitare che i bimbi siano esposti a contenuti che possano danneggiarli psicologicamente In Italia il governo ha intrapreso diverse iniziative per rafforzare la protezione dei minori online. Una di queste è la campagna Benessere dei minori online, lanciata nel dicembre 24, che mira a informare le famiglie sull'attivazione di strumenti di parental control e a sensibilizzare l'opinione pubblica sui vantaggi e i pericoli delle nuove tecnologie. A livello europeo sono stati fatti passi importanti per garantire la sicurezza dei minori online. Il Parlamento europeo ha adottato la direttiva sui servizi digitali DSA e la legge sui mercati digitali DMA, che stabiliscono nuove regole per proteggere i consumatori più vulnerabili, tra cui i bambini, appunto. Nel maggio 2022, inoltre, è stata adottata la strategia dell'Unione Europea per un Internet sicuro, con l'obiettivo di garantire che i minori siano protetti, rispettati e responsabilizzati online nel nuovo decennio digitale, in linea con i principi digitali europei, chiaramente. Vorrei concludere veramente mettendo a disposizione la mia disponibilità e la mia competenza istituzionale, ringraziando gli amici di Telefono Azzurro che in questo contesto non si limitano a parlare di sicurezza, ma da anni si impegnano quotidianamente per trovare soluzioni concrete, per rafforzare costantemente la loro cooperazione con le istituzioni nazionali europee e come dimostrato dalla sempre più attiva e anche concreta presenza su Bruxelles. E questo rappresenta un passo veramente importante nel loro impegno continuo per la tutela e la promozione dei diritti dei bambini e degli adolescenti a livello internazionale, ma anche per noi di avere un soggetto autorevole che può coadiuvarci nell'elaborazione di una politica pubblica che sia nell'interesse esclusivo dei bambini. Quindi ogni bimbo, io ritengo, meriti navigare in un ambiente digitale che lo protegga, che gli consenta di esplorare senza paura. E noi istituzioni, secondo chiaramente le nostre prerogative istituzionali, dobbiamo fermarci al massimo per un futuro più migliore e più sicuro. Grazie e buona continuazione dei lavori a tutti.
Un messaggio decisamente positivo e anche confortante sapere che abbiamo il supporto di... Oh, scusate, sto parlando la lingua sbagliata. I'm sorry, I'm speaking the wrong language. I was saying that it's so positive and encouraging to hear that we have the support of Antonella and she shares our views, the importance of placing the child at the center and to encourage a healthy and safe navigation and utilization of all these wonderful tools that we provide. And that's what we need to be able to support a safe internet day. So it's a very lovely intervention. Thank you, Antonella. So who do we go first? Mario, are you back with us?
I am sorry. Yes, I missed a minute and I
thought you abandoned me. Don't go yet.
No, never, Elena. Here we are. We all move forward together. So I see that we have David Miles as our next speaker. I don't know if he's with us, either virtually or in presence. We have other speakers lined up.
Do we have David? Yes? David, can you hear us?
Okay. Julia.
No, wait.
Julia,
I think we have a video. We have a video by David. It's not live. Let me see if we can play it.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, Mario. Bear with the technology here.
No.
It's incredible to realize that this is the 21st Safer Internet Day. And on Meta's behalf, I want to thank Professor Caffo and the Telefono Azzurro team for the amazing work they do to keep children safe online. Meta is deeply committed to keeping our users safe, particularly children. But we could not do this without partners like Telefono Azzurro. Although I can't be there in person today, I hope you have a wonderful event, and thank you once again.
That was very brief and perfect, I would say. Mario, back to you.
We'll move to, sorry, my image comes and goes. We move to the next speaker, Julie Dawson. Is Julie here with us?
Again, I believe there's another video.
Hello, thank you very much for the invitation to join you for Safer Internet Day. Thank you very much, Professor Caffo. My name is Julie Dawson and I lead the regulatory and policy team at Yoti. So a little bit now on age assurance technologies and how they actually work in practice. Yoti is a company that has done over 700 million age checks in the last couple of years, and we do between 0.5 and 1 million age checks daily. And you can see those are for a whole range of different platforms across social media, across gaming, across gambling, adult content, and some also for law enforcement. We have a wide range of different options. The one, however, that is the most popular on the 80-20 rule across all sectors, across all demographics and countries, is facial age estimation. And this is one, as you can see through the screen here, where somebody is just positioning their face in the camera. It takes approximately 1 second. It does involve a liveness check to ensure that it is a real live person. It is independently tested. And then in addition, you can add a buffer for somebody to be, say, over 18. You might add a 3-year buffer. They have to be over 21 to undertake it. Independently tested, and also we offer anti-injection attack detection. This is deployed in a whole range of different settings, from terminals through to on a software as a service basis, on device, on premise. And how is it built? So you give it lots of faces with month and year of birth, many millions. Then when it sees a new face on a software as a service basis, it detects, is that a live face? It does a pixel level analysis and gives back the age. Nothing is stored. And how do you get the data set? Well, in our instance, we're very clear, and in our white papers, we show that this was through the Yoti app, and there's an opt-out when you set up the app or any point subsequently. So crucially, this is not a facial recognition. It's detecting a face. Is that a live face? And what can I find out about that face? It's not a one-to-one verification. It's not a one-to-many. And we publish the accuracy levels across males, females, light, mid, dark skin tone, from 6 all the way to 70. But the main areas of interest are sort of the teenage years, where you can see 1.2, 1.3 years of accuracy. But we drill that down for every year. And if you looked, for example, at how many 6 to 12-year-olds would be correctly estimated to be under 13, that would be 99.5%. We have this reviewed externally, bodies such as in Germany, the KGM FSM, the audit body, the Age Check Certification Scheme. We've also had it reviewed by NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, as part of their global benchmarking of facial age estimation, and upcoming there is the Australian benchmark. AI, absolutely on everybody's tongues, and yes, we have to look at that, and hence we have an anti-injection attack detection to look at anti-spoofing and also present different forms of attacks. And there's again a specific white paper on that that you can read from Yoti. We do offer, of course, approaches which are linked to identity documents, but what I would say there is similarly, you can't just upload any document. You have to check, is that an authentic document? Is it actually my document? Is there a face match between the document and the individual? Also a liveness check. Also look at anti-injection, and only with all of those in place would those equally be a high level of assurance. We also have age tokens and can offer interoperability. I'm happy to answer any questions if people want to send those to me. And then some case studies. Some of you have probably heard of our work with Meta, where people who were under the age of 18 wanting to try and change their age to over 18, that would put in place a facial age estimation. This has now been extended to teen accounts and extended globally across Instagram. And also we're working similarly with Facebook dating. Another good example is the social media live streaming platform Yubo, which has a teens area, the 13 to 17 and 18 plus area. And they don't want under 18s in the teens area, under 13s in the teens area, and they don't want 55-year-olds in the teens area. So hence they use our facial age estimation to triage, and then people close to the edges, they ask for an additional approval. We have got several videos that we can share on this and give you more details. OnlyFans is another example, and this is a social stroke adult platform where across the board, both for people uploading content as well as for people accessing, they've put in place Yoti's methods, the facial age estimation, and also on some instances, the one-off upload of a document or use of a reusable digital identity app. Another one in an immersive environment would be Avakin Life. So I hope I've given you a whistle-stop tour of some examples of where age assurance is in use, how accurate it can be, the certifications that are there, meeting the standards internationally, and hopefully that's given you a taster. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thank you to Giulia for her intervention. And I would move our debate to Luana Lavecchia, who I think is there sitting with us.
No, I
Luana,
think she's actually not with us.
she's not?
No, she's not, Mario, I'm afraid.
So we have Federico Becchetti.
So we have Federico, yes, he's just sitting next to me. Wonderful, and he's got my microphone.
Federico, it's good to see you.
Thank you, Mario.
Thank you for being with us. You are the last speaker in the list that I have. So
there is one more.
Oh, there is one more. Okay. Well,
I'll try to be brief.
Latest. But you know, the floor is yours. What would be your comment? I mean, we talked about many different things. We've seen the challenges. You are on the front line, as your colleague was before. So can you tell us what is your position on this and what you would suggest us to do to help you doing your work, which is on the front line of protecting the child from abuses?
Thank you, Mario, for the presentation. Thank you for inviting me here and allowing me to share this floor with this knowledgeable expert. From my point of view, first of all, let me introduce myself. I'm Federico Becchetti. I've been working in child sexual abuse and exploitation online cases for almost 3 years. And right now, after hearing what have been said, I asked if it's possible to display 2 pictures that I personally created using AI. We wanted to create a cover page for the International Day dedicated to combating child sexual exploitation. And from this picture, I want to show not only how internet presents hidden risks for children who are navigating and surfing the web, but I also wanted to convey a more hidden message. I'm a terrible drawer, and if someone like me can make a pretty decent pictures in a few minutes, so detailed, then I just want to show how AI can be powerful in creating digital content, multimedia files. And this is actually what we came across in the last year, and it's what concerned me. I remember last March when we found out about this new category in the dark web, collecting AI-generated material, and what struck me the most to see this material was not that it wasn't real, it was the severity of the abuse depicted. And so I'm here. I would like to comment and follow up also with what Elena said. I thought it was very interesting, and I would like to follow up with this. Also because I've heard the argument that AI-generated material is not harmful, and let alone those who say shouldn't be illegal just because it doesn't show real children involved. So let me tell you my point of view about this argument. I totally disagree for many reasons. First of all, as I told you, this material can show very severe abuses. And as I showed you, it was very easy for even someone not capable like me to draw anything, to create digital content, and creating it in such a fast way, so the quantity of child sexual abuse and exploitation material could increase to the power of 10, to the power of 100. And there are some figures that tell us that not only consumers of child sexual abuse material are more likely to make contact with children after consuming this illegal material. So if we create more quantity to the power, as I said, of 10, hundreds, thousands, then we also increase the likelihood of having consumers of making contact with children. But now I will tell you my worst fear about all this. What if tomorrow we will not be able to distinguish between a real abuse and AI-generated abuse? I can tell you that a few days ago, we were looking at one illegal picture, and we were wondering if this could have been AI-generated. So this is not just a nightmare, it's real. And since this is real, we need to respond in a proper way. First of all, I think coordinated political response is the key. So having a regulation which can allow us to address this challenge properly. But I also find something else which could be very useful. If it could be harder in the future to find those children who are victims of abuses, ongoing abuses, because of AI-generated material, which make it more difficult to distinguish and for us to prioritize our work, then we need to make it easier for children to reach out to us. And in this, I want to praise also the work done in from the third sector and from hotlines, because I've read many reports from them, and I remember one sentence repeating over time: please don't tell my parents, please don't tell the police, because in that moment, those children are scared, whatever they've been facing, and they don't know if they what have come across is wrong. They don't know if they've done something wrong. So it's good that they can still open up to someone and they can reach out to someone who can then connect them with us so that we can help. So I believe in this sense, the hotlines can make a really good missing ring in this chain, which needs to be very strong to help us reconnect and allow us to save as many children as possible from online abuse. That's it from me. I will hand it over.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was extremely interesting to hear your direct testimony, and especially the challenges that are ahead of us and that you see in real time, of course. I would now give the floor back to the chairmanship. I don't know if there are other people part of the panel or if we move to the conclusion.
Now we have one more person, last but not least. Catherine Flick. I'm sorry, they've all forgotten about you, but I haven't. I know you're sitting just next to me. She's the head of legal at INEA, Tech and Biomedical. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you always to Telefono Azzurro for inviting me. It's a long time that we discuss together, we do things together. Well, actually, nowadays I am the chief of legal at INEA Tech and Biomedical, but the reason of my presence here is my experience as the chief of legal in the Italian Digital Agency and as a professor in the domain of law, of the law in the digital era. And so let me come back to the legal side, to the discussion between innovation and regulation that we had before. We should say that, I would say that the dark side of artificial intelligence affect not only children, but anyone. And what is important from the point of view of children is that they are more vulnerable. This is the point. They are less able to understand and to defend themselves. And this is one of the reasons why we have to find something. We have to find some solution. So I listened with interest. I was really interested in the videos we saw and in the speech we listened to before. We should consider the question and the challenges from many different perspectives. So neither the regulation is not enough. It never will be enough. But what we can ask ourselves is if the existing regulation, the AI Act, and we heard is the first regulation, real regulation on AI, could be sufficient or not. AI Act and all the regulation concerning the EU data strategy. And I think that the answer could be yes, regulation could be enough, because regulation can address the choices and the decisions of those who create, who make. The point is that the majority of the solution come from the technology and not by the law. This is the point. So what is interesting in the AI Act is that anyone has his place. Government and public institutions have a key role to play, and they have also clear obligations and duties in ensuring that children's rights are upheld and all the times, and that the AI systems are designed and used to support the best interest of children. So the fact that UK banned certain applications because they are too dangerous for children, and not only for children, well, we can do the same. We have the instruments to do the same if we consider that certain applications are too dangerous. So we have the instruments. And at the same time, all actors involved in the production chain and in the diffusion of AI have duties and responsibilities. So in principle, we have the instruments. But however, of course, several challenges remain, and this is the point. And so the following question is how to address the challenging remaining, because we can pretend the application of the rules, we can obtain the application of the rules from those who act in the open air, let me say. For those who act in the darkest, well, we should find other systems. And this is our real challenge. And so what we maybe need is a kind of pact for the future of our children, where all the different actors are involved. We need to help children to defend themselves. And we cannot do it, of course, with the regulation. We can do it with the psychologists, with teachers, with parents. And this is another point, how much parents are informed of their responsibilities, practical responsibilities. We heard of children having devices since they are 1 year old, few months, so they are very good in using them. But how they can understand the danger if no one tell them, explain them. So I am convinced that we really need a multidisciplinary approach and a real pact for the future altogether.
Thank you. Thank you, Catherine. Mario, I think now we can start reaching towards a conclusion. You have the microphone turned off, I think.
I was saying I now will withdraw from my role of moderator of these two panels, and it has been extremely interesting, and thank you for participating, all of you. And I leave it up to you to draw the conclusion.
Thank you. Thank you, Mario, for being such a such a good moderator. It's been incredible. Thank you. Ernesto, would
Thank
you
you
like
all.
to say the last
Bye.
few words, which I think you should?
This is the moment to synthesize 2 days of work, because we started yesterday to discuss about new research, new challenge that we have in this complicated area of child protection. Start from the idea that the children have to be at the center of our strategy. And we have now the knowledge through the data of research that the situation is complicated because we have new technology and the children are so immersed in this very vast area of chat, social network, gaming, and in this case we saw the adults, parents and teacher not so well prepared. We have to invest more in education, training, but the system had to be more regulated, and this was the discussion of today. And I think that the quality of the regulation had to be different from the past, had to be a more active, positive regulation, had to be easy to understand for all the different, from the institution, from the client, means from family and from the children. But we have to create a pact with the company, because if not, it will be very complicated to achieve some important goals. I think that the company play a crucial role. We discussed this afternoon together, and we know that in the last few weeks we had a big change in the strategy of the big company about this issue. From one side, we have the states that are now in a very important change of policy, and to the other side we have China, and they know their approach. That is a state controlled system in which we have very few issues that can permit to us very few information about what can be the future in this area of the world. But we have the other part of the world, Africa, South America, and we have to think globally. This is the reason in which we protect, for example, which your part is discussing about. For the side, I think we need international collaboration more and more. Through the police have to collaborate with each other. We have new technology, new aspect that we have to share as intervention. We had a meeting a few days ago in UK with all the colleagues from different police of the world that discuss together. We have a new center in which you're a central person, Elena, and to collect data, best practice, and to train people in the area of the most extreme situation as some. That is a big challenging experience for all of us. But we have to work all together, means researcher, policymaker, and the company together to find the solution. But we have to discuss with the children too. The children have to be part of our platform of initiative and of activities. And I think that our country, Italy, had to be more and more active in this field. We had a lot of information today about the government, the parliament, and the positive aspect that I saw is that we see the problem now more than before. We have some in our agenda now some concrete solution. I think that Guido Scorza said this afternoon that age verification is not far to achieve. We can arrive to have age verification. It's one important step forward. But I think we have to think about how to manage the new challenge. For me, artificial intelligence is one big issue, and as Telefono Azzurro, we started to work some years ago. I think we have to do more. We are working about to have a chatbot that is able to interact with children from one side, but I think we have to integrate new technology with the new legislation. And in this case, I think we can do some more to give more answers to the children and adolescents in our country, but working together with the other colleagues. I think this was a very interesting opportunity, but from now we have to work more and more to transform our ideas in concrete action. Thank all of you. Thank to Mario and to the chairmanship that he had with Emilio at the beginning. Thank you so much. Thank you, and Elena, that was a wonderful supporter and a wonderful speaker today with us, and all the speakers that were in those days with us, and to the staff people of Telefono Azzurro that worked so well to organize this event. And thank you all for this important, if you like, moment of discussion and to find together some important solution.
Thank you. Bye bye, everybody.
Ciao Mario, grazie. Buona
Ciao,
serata,
bye bye.
buona
Grazie a
giornata.
tutti. Grazie.